Welcome, sports fans, to the latest S&M production of the Sunday Night Sports Nerd Show. It is the most absurd 90 minutes of anything goes, smack talk, and a whole lot more. Every Sunday night, the sports nerd joins forces with three charismatic co-hosts who are a select group of sports nerds with attitudes that are known in Nerd Nation as the Rampant. We are four of the most loudmouth, smack-talking nerds around, coming at you with some sick rips and rants, which may be just enough to make you pee your pants. So listen up, Nerd Nation. Let's rise and welcome the legend himself. He is the founder, he is the host, and he is the star of the Sports Nerd Show. Coming to you live, straight out of Lakeland, Florida, Scott, the Sports Nerd. Right.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Nerds. I am your host, Scott, the Sports Nerd, right, and along with my co-hosts, Mr. Elliot Big E Lamba, Bill's Mafia lifetime member, Mr. John G. Olson, Ken, Go Cowboys, Mr. Ken Koslow, and joining us tonight for a special edition would be Mr. Derek Lofland, our NFL guru, fantasy, and other stuff as far as football is concerned.
How's it going,
Gentlemen, welcome. Good to see you. Ready to rock and roll? How we all doing? Good to see you. All right, so we're going to start the show off with Mr. Jim Brown. And
rest in peace.
As a Browns fan, my love for Jim Brown has no limits. He is a controversial figure, however, over the course of his lifetime. But nothing can diminish the fact of the impact he had on the football field. He was considered by many, including this guy, as the best football player of all time, especially during his era of the late 50s and 60s. Now, Elliot and John, you know, they don't remember Jim Brown. I never saw him play live either because he was retired before I was born. But growing up a Browns fan, you learn about Jim Brown, you watch the highlights, you see what he's done, and you realize that he was probably the most dominant football player of his era at the very least. You got guys paying tribute to him on Twitter, including Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, the greats that played the game, as the greatest of all time. He retired in 1964 at the prime of his career at 29 years old, went into movies. He was very controversial in that he was accused of, there was a lot of accusations of domestic violence in his lifetime. Other types of running.
So you're saying he would have been canceled in today's day and age?
Well, in today's days of he would have been canceled by
or given a $230 million fully guaranteed contract.
Thank you, Derek, for bringing up this John Watson. I appreciate it.
We are talking about the Browns after all.
But I mean, Ken, you were young when he retired. I mean, really, really young.
Yep.
What do you remember? Do you have any memories of watching him play or no?
I do.
Okay.
As I posted the day that he passed away, he was basically a runaway tornado. You got one shot at him. You know, if you didn't gang tackle him, chances are you were not going to bring him down. He played only 9 years, led the league in rushing 8 of those 9 years.
Right.
And remember, in most of these seasons that he played, they only played 12 games.
Right.
He rushed for 12,000 yards in an average of 12 games a year.
Right.
If you multiply that back out to a 6 to 17 game season they play now, he probably would have had close to 20,000 yards. So
yeah, I agree.
He would have kept the all-time leading rusher.
Right.
He is far and away the most devastating running back I've ever seen.
He was actually a fullback, but yeah, I mean, you're right. Yeah, he was actually listed as a fullback at the time.
And he could crash over. He had speed that was deceptive. I've seen him take screen passes out and just turn them into 60, 70-yard touchdown runs.
Mhm.
He was the greatest running back there has ever lived.
And in the 9 years he played, he never missed a game.
Never missed a game. Last game he ever played in the 66 Pro Bowl, he was the MVP, naturally. Like I said, we'll never see anything like him remotely ever again.
And he was his last season in 64, he was the NFL MVP as well.
He was. Probably should have been in 65 also.
Yeah.
I think Horning won it that year. But yeah, I remember seeing the games against Cowboys. They thought they had him gang tackled and he got away. One I can relate to. I saw this in an interview once. Sam Huff once said that Jim, congratulated him on a nice tackle when he brought him down. And Sam looked at him and goes, "Tackle hell, I couldn't get out of your way."
Right. Right. So
he is a combination of, and you talked about all the players who have been acknowledging him. Emmitt Smith, he had Emmitt Smith's strength and finesse. He had Derrick Henry's strength. He did not have Gale Sayers' speed, but he was fast enough. He was more than fast enough. And you put that all together, there's never been anything like him. There won't ever be anything again like him.
what do you think of what are your thoughts, Derek?
Oh, I mean, he's one of the most incredible football players that's ever played. I mean, you look at any top 100 list they put in, he's always in the top 5. As far as all-time great running backs, I think there's an argument for Walter Payton, and I think there's an argument for Barry Sanders. Right. But I mean, Jim Brown, when he retired, he held the record for rushing yards. He held the record for rushing touchdowns. He was the only player to average 100 yards per game and 5 yards per carry for his career. He won 3 MVP awards, and nobody did that until Brett Favre did with the Packers in the 90s. And then you have Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers in recent history that have gotten to that many. But for many years, he was the only 3-time MVP winner. And what I think is funny is with him is football wasn't his best sport.
No, lacrosse was.
Lacrosse was.
And he even played basketball too.
Yeah. And he was. I was reading some articles about him playing lacrosse where he basically told people that lacrosse was his passion, and if he could have played lacrosse and got paid like he did to play football, he would have gone and played lacrosse. He was the first member of the first black member of the Lacrosse Hall of Fame. And I believe in the All-Star game that he played coming out of college, he had 5 goals in the first half against the other All-Stars. And people that were there said they've never seen anything like it. You could argue he was a better lacrosse player than he was a running back. Yeah. And he's a top 3 running back of all time and probably a top 5 player of all time. I mean, to me, the names that I always put in that best player ever, Lawrence Taylor, Reggie White, Jim Brown, Jerry Rice, and now I would say Tom Brady, now that he's retired at the quarterback. To me, those would be the top 5 players in the history of the league, and we could sit here and debate all night what order you want to put them in. I don't know how you rank guys that played in that many different eras, but those guys were just difference makers that did things that nobody's ever seen.
Go ahead, John.
It's because we're talking about what your guys' Mount Rushmore is. That's actually a question from one of the Threadcasts. Taskmaster 4450, friend of the show. He said, here's a thread question in honor of Jim Brown, the running back, not the singer. I like how he did that. But best running back of all time, he'd go with OJ or Barry Sanders. And OJ for the off-field performance, for sure.
For the on-field performance.
I said on, but I
said on, not the off. No, is it on?
No, I know the way Tass thinks, so it's definitely the off-field performance. Yeah. No, but seriously, what would you put OJ and Barry up there with Jim, or would you kind of say
OJ had the most yards. Was the first running back to achieve 2,000 yards in a single season.
Yeah. OJ had the most speed.
Barry terrible team.
Was the most elusive.
He didn't have power. It was elusiveness. It wasn't power.
Yeah. I mean, squirm his way
Walter
up.
Payton would run people over just like
Walter
Jim
Payton,
Brown did.
yeah. But even so, he still did not have, Jim Brown's strength. The only player I've seen remotely close to Jim Brown's strength is probably Derrick Henry.
I would say Earl Campbell.
Earl Campbell, yeah. Earl Campbell, Bo Jackson to an extent.
I was just going to say him.
Bo Jackson, yeah.
Herschel to an extent, but Jim Brown is on a planet on his own. You mentioned Mount Rushmore. I mentioned this in the post that I had. I have on my Mount Rushmore of all-time great sporting personalities: Pele, Muhammad Ali, Babe Ruth, Jim Brown.
You don't have Michael Jordan on there.
I do not have Michael Jordan on there.
Wow.
Or Wayne Gretzky.
Chicago fan, but that's okay.
Wayne
Gretzky and Jordan. If you extended it to six faces, yes, Gretzky and Jordan would be on there.
Yeah, Gretzky and Jordan.
For only four. And I'm talking about not only just in sports, but worldwide figures. And even to that extent, I would be willing to probably on a worldwide basis probably put Jordan in ahead of Babe Ruth, maybe. But even so, Babe Ruth was, legendary, and maybe not necessarily on a world scale, but Pele and Muhammad Ali were known around the world. Babe Ruth,
not just for what they did in the ring or on the pitch, but for everything,
off the field,
off and on. Yeah.
Jim Brown would have probably been on that list because of his activism off the field. He staunchly supported Muhammad Ali in his fight with the U.S. government.
Well, there was the Miami meet in 1965 or 4 or whatever it was. 64 with Malcolm X and
Jim Brown,
Muhammad Ali,
and somebody else.
There was.
Martin Luther King.
It wasn't Martin. No, it wasn't Martin Luther King. It was a singer. It was a.
It was Harry Belafonte.
No, it was somebody else. Why can't I think? But no, Jim Brown. Yeah, I mean his Sam Cooke. Excuse me, Sam Cooke.
Okay, Sam Cooke.
It was Sam Cooke.
Right. That's
Jim Brown's off the field activism is legendary because of his support. Because of his support for Muhammad Ali, he had the Cleveland meeting with Ali and Kareem, and Malcolm X and whoever else was there. I forget who else was there, but he had that as well. He was famous for pretty much ending the war between the Crips and the Bloods in LA.
Yeah.
And what was ironic about that, what was iconic about that was that Jim Brown actually invited those groups into his own
house. Yep.
His own house in LA to have a meet and have a summit and to try and end the violence. Again, he is controversial because of his violent tendencies, but he never stopped trying to improve himself in his later years, and he's done a world of good for race relations, violence issues regarding, things of that nature, and it's just he is one of those figures that will be remembered as not just impactful on society, but also controversial because of his own actions in his lifetime.
Here's a fun fact for you. I mean, you may or may not have heard this before, but Jim Brown pretty much saved Richard Pryor's life. And
I did not know that. What happened?
Richard Pryor's talked about this in his act. And Jim Brown literally got in his face and said, "What you gonna do?" And when Richard Pryor was completely out of control on cocaine, freebasing, everything, Jim Brown went to his house, walked in his door, looked him straight in the eye, and said, "What you gonna do?" And after a 1 hour session with Jim Brown, Richard Pryor's life straightened out, and he credited him with it on that in that special. He said, "Jim Brown saved my life."
Yeah, I mean,
I think the one thing too about Jim Brown, and we always get into these debates about who's the best team in NFL history. Is it the '60 Packers? Is it the '70 Steelers? Is it the Patriots teams of the last 20 years, the Dallas teams of the '90s? And the one thing that makes that so hard to do is, like, if you look at a player like Ben Roethlisberger, he weighs more than half of the offensive linemen in Canton because players used to weigh. Players used to weigh 250
that's
pounds.
brutal, Derek. Come on, man.
Yeah, I mean, Forrest Gregg was the finest football player that Vince Lombardi ever coached, and weighed 250 pounds as an offensive tackle. If the Green Bay Packers from the '60s played any team in the NFL today, the Texans even, they would get steamrolled by 6 touchdowns because the size difference on the lines would be so different. But there's those few players from the eras of 50, 60, 70 years ago where they could play in today's game. And Jim Brown, if you were to put him in today's league as a 21-year-old running back, would be one of the best running backs in the game. He was 6'2" and about 230 pounds. He has the speed and the strength. He has everything, solid muscle. He would be a dominant player in today's game. And there's a few other players like that. Don Hudson, I think, is one from the '40s with the Packers who held all the receiving records for 50 years and they said could run the 100-meter dash in just a little bit under 10 seconds. That's a guy that had the athleticism. I think Lenny Moore from the Colts was one of the first two-way running backs.
I would also put John Unitas in that group as well.
Ollie Matson.
Yep. There's a few of them, and Jim Brown, I mean, would be as dominant as any player from the past in today's game. His skill set would easily translate to today.
You're talking about the Packers offensive line. I think you mentioned Forrest Gregg was 250. I think Kramer was 245.
Yep.
Fuzzy Thurston may have been
right.
the biggest one. I think maybe 260, but I don't think anybody else is bigger than that.
Most offensive linemen are pushing 300 pounds these days.
220.
Well, I remember when the Niners in the '80s used to have one of the smallest offensive lines in the league because they used to, when cut blocking was legal, they wanted guys that could get out on the perimeter and block like that, and you couldn't get a 300-pound lineman out there to do that. And then when the Great Wall of Dallas came through in the '90s and they had all those 300-pound guys, it just revolutionized what people were looking for in offensive linemen.
Yep.
I think Larry Allen was like 325.
Well, Nate Newton,
oh my God.
I mean, Nate Newton was huge.
Yeah, Nate Newton was Nate.
Eric Williams.
Yeah,
that's the thing is that the '90s, if the '90s
were road graders,
I mean, if the '90s Cowboys played against the '60s Packers, I mean, Emmitt Smith would have averaged 15 yards a carry. I mean, there's no way that that Packers defensive line. That's why I think it's a silly conversation when you look at greatest teams that way. You look at what they did against their era and compare it to what the current teams have done against the teams of their era. You try to look at who's been the most dominant, and that's why I think Jim Brown is one of the 5 best players in the history of the league, because when he retired, there was no running back that was even in the conversation with him. Like I said, the only 2 I think that you could have a conversation with right now, Walter Payton and Barry Sanders. Those 3. And if I was going to do a Mount Rushmore of running backs, the 4th guy would be Emmitt Smith to me. Those would be my top 4 running backs that I've seen. And that was the thing about that top 100 list. There were guys. I think Marshall Faulk was left off that list. Marcus Allen was left off that list. Running back is one of the deepest positions for all-time great players. There's been a lot of good ones.
John doesn't look enthused or interested whatsoever.
Don't care. I'm not old. And Derek is the youngest one on the show.
I went to the Hall of Fame for the first time when I went for Favre's induction back in 2016. That was my first time there, and I love going through the Hall of Fame. The only bad thing about it was there were so many people there, you couldn't get to see anything. I'd love to go back to the Hall of Fame and just go through it. I mean,
and the Hall of Fame induction this year is going to have more special meaning because Joe Thomas is going in, and it'll be a large Cleveland contingency there, and there'll be probably plenty of tributes to Jim Brown during that week. So it's going to be even more.
Yep.
I mean, Joe Thomas is the first Brown to go in, and nobody remembers when the last Brown went into the Hall of Fame. I mean, it's been so long. But for Joe Thomas to go in this year is really great.
You didn't know that Cleveland's playing the Jets in the Hall of Fame game.
Yes, correct. Yeah, so it's even so and I don't foresee seeing Aaron Rodgers in the Hall of Fame game, but that's okay. But I did want to bring you on, Derek, because I know you love football history. You love the old school football players from back in the 50s and the 60s, and I know you had an opinion on Jim Brown, and I really appreciate it. The man has a lot of issues. I mean, he wasn't perfect, but you cannot diminish his impact on the NFL. And it wasn't just his playing days, but his mentorship of future and players that came after him on that Browns team. He was always an ambassador to the Cleveland Browns. He was always part of the Cleveland Browns culture. He loved the city, he loved the fans, and he loved the franchise. And when they came back in 1999, after becoming the Ravens, as Elliott would say, he came back as an ambassador and mentored and he impacted the players that came with after that inaugural season. So it's I mean, he was 87 years old. He lived a full life. He was remembered also for his role in 100 Rifles when he kissed and had a love scene with Raquel Welch, and that caused an uproar.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the Dirty Dozen, which he was a great role for him. And if people don't remember, he was also in The Running Man as one of the guys that Arnold went up against in The Running Man as well. He had the flamethrower thing going on. So,
do you know who the first interracial kiss was on television?
It was actually
Captain Kirk.
Captain Kirk and Uhura.
Lieutenant Uhura. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a forced kiss because an alien was making him do it.
Correct, but it was still the first interracial
it was the
kiss
first
on
interracial
television.
kiss. Yeah. And that's crazy that that stuff used to be an issue.
How do you not mention Jim Brown's greatest performance? Like Mars Attacks, man. Come on.
He was in Mars Attacks?
Yeah.
He's
Classic.
in over 40 movies. He had a very good
or I'm gonna get you
career.
sucker. You ever see that?
I'm gonna get you, sucker. Yeah.
No? Really, Scott? You haven't seen I'm gonna get you sucker?
No.
Really? Wow. That's a Keenan Ivory Wayans classic.
Mm-hmm. Blaxploitation movie.
Great movie. Fantastic. Just like the best part is when he goes into that African store and the white guy comes out with the dashiki and he's like it's great. It's fantastic. It's the best thing. It's great.
Hey, Derek.
You had to see it to get the joke. Anyways, whatever.
Can you put a little perspective on something for me?
Sure.
Okay, somebody made a prognostication last week, unequivocally and without doubt, that the Cleveland Browns are going to win the AFC North this year. What's your take on that?
Were you watching the Comedy Central? Or?
Everywhere I look, it says they're going to
leave it to Elliott, man. Leave it to Elliott.
Dude, yeah, the Jets are going to win the AFC East too, man. It's written, right? I love it.
It was not me. It was not.
Let me just say, I do not believe. Let me just say for the record, I do not believe the Browns will win the AFC North. I am not of that belief.
Last week.
No, I did not.
Yes, you did. You said they were going to win their division.
No.
We have it on tape.
Oh, God.
The tape does
right.
not lie. I mean, that's a competitive division, but I think you look. They were in last place there last year by 2 full games, and I think Pittsburgh had a great draft. I think Baltimore signing Lamar Jackson was huge, and they added some pieces. The Bengals still got Joe Burrow and all their pieces together. I mean, it's hard when we talk about who's going to make the playoffs each year because usually, you have 14 teams, and usually about half of the ones that made it last year don't make it this year, and there's always a couple surprises. I mean, if the Browns came out and won the AFC North, would I be shocked? No, but I mean, what that would mean is that Deshaun Watson is going to be looking like 2020, 2019 Deshaun Watson and not what they had last year. I mean, he hasn't played good football in a long time. And, I think they still got some question marks on that defense. They did some things to add it, but the AFC's brutal. I mean, the AFC East, the worst team is the Patriots in that division, and the AFC North, the worst team is the Browns. You put those teams in the NFC South, they probably win the division there. So, I mean, the Browns could go and be a fantastic team this year, and they could win 8 games and be in last place in that division because of just how competitive the AFC
The
West.
AFC overall is brutal. I mean, just the amount of talented quarterbacks in that conference alone is just ominous. I mean, you're going to look at top tier quarterbacks in that conference that are not going to make the playoffs because the numbers just won't pan out for them.
Yeah, only 7 can make it.
Yeah,
and one of them has to be the AFC
10 or
South.
12 great quarterbacks in that conference at least.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback in the NFC right now, and number 2, I don't know who it is. I mean, is it Stafford? He was hurt all last year. Is it Jared Goff? Is it Dak? Goff's been to a Super Bowl, but not with the Lions, and Dak has won a couple playoff games, but he's never been to a conference championship. I mean, the NFC South is in complete reboot. I mean, Daniel Jones is probably a top 5 quarterback in the NFC. If he was in the AFC, he'd be a bottom 5 quarterback.
Right. The AFC is really strong, so it's going to be hard for the Browns to get in there. But but you got to, that's why you play the games, Derek, because you got to see who's the best and who's going to come through. So I'm not foreseeing anything special out of Cleveland because of how difficult the AFC overall is going to be. I do believe that the Browns will finish above the Steelers. I don't think the Steelers are going to do much. I really don't. I worry about the Bengals and the Ravens in that division. I do not worry about the Steelers, believe it or not. I just don't.
The Steelers have never had a losing record under Tomlin, even last year. And Kenny Pickett's in his second year. They added offensive line help. They got a lot of young skill position players, and Watt was hurt for a good part of last year. What if TJ Watt doesn't get hurt last year? They might be a playoff team.
I still think the Steelers take a step back.
That's why you play the games, Derek, because you got to see who's the best.
All right, who's that going? Who's that going? Is that you, Is that you, Elliot?
Usually is.
Okay.
I ain't do shit.
It wasn't me.
I ain't got nothing on around here.
All right. Well,
Exciting.
I'm going to move on, guys. Thank you, Derek, for your insight, and I appreciate you coming on to honor Jim Brown. I really do.
Yeah, it was great being here. Like I said, I always love talking NFL history.
Yes.
It's more fun to me than talking fantasy, and I love talking fantasy too.
So guys, have you been watching the NBA playoffs?
Yeah.
I have not.
Let's
Can I
go
do-
Denver.
Oh.
Let's
Can I-
go Miami.
Can I talk about
Denver,
LeBron?
Miami. Denver and Miami.
I
That's right. Your
love it.
Bucks got eliminated in the first round.
They did, and they fired their head coach as a result. But I'd love to hear some trashing of LeBron if you guys want to do that. That's
Oh,
That's what Elliot had before. He says he's the one that trashes LeBron the most. So
Let's go. Hold up.
and
Yes,
Mr.
man.
Mean Queen over here, or King, I guess you could say, posting crazy stuff on in our group about LeBron being the choker and the flopper and
Well, let's put it this way. His name is LeClown now.
LeClown. Okay, I saw that meme. Yes.
He has now been relabeled LeClown.
Lay clown.
And he's got so
You're
many
right, guy.
people following him and endorsing him, and it just amazes me how stupid people can be.
well, but the thing is, he's a top 5 player in the history of the NBA.
I don't know about
I mean,
that.
I know about that. I mean, he's an incredible player. But I think the whole thing with him has been this narrative that he's better than Jordan, and he's not better than Jordan. That's what makes him so
He wasn't even better
toxic.
than Kobe. He wasn't even better than Kobe.
No. I would
Who,
put
LeBron?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, listen, man. I'm not a LeBron lover by any stretch, but he's up there, man. Like he is as much of a clown he is and all this stuff. He always made his teammates better. He always looked to distribute the ball first. He wasn't. I don't know, dude. I don't like people that put him on this top tier level. But to say that he's not, I don't know, man.
He's the all-time scorer in the history of the NBA.
He's got to be top 5 of all time. Like he's got.
He's in the running to be on the Mount Rushmore of NBA players.
Yeah, the only 2 guys I would put on top of him, like, and this is just me not being a LeBron fan, is like Kareem, Jordan. Like who else?
Magic.
Wilt.
I'd put
Wilt
Kobe.
Chamberlain.
Nah.
Bill Russell.
No.
Really?
Yeah, not Bill.
Really hard to compare.
Bill Russell's up there.
Centers.
Like he's top 5 too. But LeBron, if you're taking a snapshot
Larry
of
Bird.
his career, I don't know.
If I were going to have a starting 5 for the history of the NBA, I'd have Steph Curry at point. I'd put Jordan at 2. I'd put Bird at 3. I'd put LeBron at 4, and I would put Kareem at 5. That's what I would. I'd play LeBron at power forward because he's big enough and he's strong enough to play there, and you'd have a team that could absolutely run up and down the floor that way. And it'd be hard because Magic was always my starting point guard, but I think what Steph's done the last couple of years, revolutionary game with the 3-point shot, puts him in there, and Kobe would be the other one that I loved watching Kobe play too.
Wow, guys! I mean, we got plenty of people in the Facebook chat, but none of them are linked to Restream, so I got to repost the link.
Yeah, man, let's go. Chop. What's going on with you, man? Be on top of this stuff, man, because I love talking to Facebook user.
Right.
Facebook user.
Let me reach out
Facebook user
to Clarky, Pedro, and Jamal. Y'all need to reconnect to Restream. Please click the link and reconnect, please. Thank you very much.
Ninja kick it.
Is that Bill Clark coming on?
Clarky, yes, it is.
I wanted to talk about his Boston.
Mr. Boston.
Yeah, we got to talk about the Celtics, man.
I want to talk about the unstoppable Boston Bruins he kept yapping about.
Oh, the Boston Bruins. Oh, gosh.
He was one of those annoying Boston fans that kept, we're not going to beat by anybody. We're going to destroy everyone.
Before we get that, who got the number one draft pick in the NHL lottery? Are they in the NHL lottery yet?
Chicago.
What do you think, Derek?
I love it. That Canadian kid Bedard, he is going to be
Connor
nice
Bedard. You win the Connor Bedard sweepstakes.
Yep.
Welcome.
We'll see. He's 2 feet tall, right? Like, I mean, let's be honest. He's good. He's amazing. His shot is incredible. Probably one of the best shots you're going to see ever.
You're good, Pedro.
But he's this tall. And when you're this tall, it's very easy for the 6'7" behemoths that they've got on defense for you to get crushed. Like the NHL is a very fast league now, so that plays to his advantage. But look at what happened. Like here, where's Clarky? He'll talk about what's his name? That guy from the Boston Bruins, Mark Savard.
Zdeno Chara.
Amazing. Well, Mark Savard was this kind of smaller statured guy who just got destroyed, right?
Yeah.
So
the tall guy.
I'd love to see Bedard do good, and I don't get the Chicago hatred. Whatever, I like Chicago. It's an original 16, man. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, their shine as a franchise took a hit with the sexual abuse scandal.
Right.
I mean, it's the same thing that happened with Penn State. It's the same thing that happened with Michigan State gymnastics, Ohio State wrestling. I mean, you get into the news for something like that, it takes your shine off. So.
The Chelsea Dagger will return.
The what?
The Chelsea Dagger. That's the song that the PA guy plays every time the Blackhawks score a goal.
Oh.
Gotcha.
Derek knows what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
You're so well versed. Ken. It's amazing
I'm
how
trying.
knowledgeable you are about the
I
league.
40 plus years as a
Totally.
sports journalist, Kent Ron. I mean, John.
Right.
Ken, Ron, John. At least you
Whatever
got
your
it.
name is.
That's good.
That's why we have him on the show. He's got 40 plus years in that brain, and it's just, I mean,
Oh, that's the only reason? Way.
it's like an encyclopedia. Plus, he's a good friend of mine, so it's, that happens as well.
Jeez,
We never met in person, but that hopefully one day that will change. We'll see how that goes.
I just have a penchant for rooting for losing teams.
Yeah, well,
you and me both, brother.
yeah, I'm right there with you guys, so I'm with you.
How about them Denver Nuggets?
How about
Yeah,
that?
Denver
Let's
Nuggets.
go.
Oh my God, what they're doing to the Lakers is obscene.
And yet the
I love
media
it.
just still says, well, did the Lakers have a chance to come back from 3-0? Come on, give me a
no.
freaking break.
0-149 is the record of teams that have gone down 3-0. 0-149.
Yep.
You
And
know,
the Lakers have never even won a game once they're down 0-3. I think they're 0-8 when they're down.
Yeah,
0-3.
and-
They've been swept. They've been swept. They've never gone to anything beyond a fifth game.
right, and yet, going into this series, I mean, you got to look at the head coach and Jokic both saying, you guys never gave us a chance against these guys.
Mm-hmm. Nobody did.
No, you guys. I mean, the media never gave. It was all about LeBron and the Lakers. The LeBron and the Lakers are going to win this series and go on to the NBA Finals, and it's going to be a LeBron show and an AD show and whoever else is on that team. It doesn't matter. The Nuggets don't even look at the press. They don't care about what the book.
I love it.
It's and they're above all of it. And they're just, what, we're going to do what we're going to do. We're going to do our job. We're going to play our game. And we're going to dominate. And that's exactly what they did and what they have done. They're up 3-0 in the series. They won last night in LA, and they're probably going to win game 4 because that's just how good they are.
Here's something ESPN won't tell you. Okay. LeBron James has been either swept or gentleman swept, which is a 5-game series. Okay. In every series other than the bubble since 2016.
Yeah.
Ron Gallo.
I don't think that stat's right, though, is it? They didn't get gentlemen swept by the Suns a couple years ago, did they? I thought they lost that series in 6 games. I thought they got a 2-1 against the Suns and they lost in 6.
That's what I was going to say. This Denver team reminds me a lot of the Milwaukee Bucks from 2 years ago.
They got the former MVP who could have been MVP this year again.
Yeah.
But everybody was barking for Joel Embiid all over the place.
Yep. And let's welcome Ron Gallo to the show. How you doing, Ron? Good to see you.
Doing pretty good. You guys?
Not bad, buddy. Good to see
Hi,
you.
Ron.
Hey,
Doing
Carl.
good.
Oh, Cargo.
You realize that in basketball and in hockey this year,
Hockey.
there could be a number 8 seed in their championship round?
Yes.
Let's go, Florida.
Look at it this way. There could
Has that ever happened? 2
That
8
could be a
seeds?
South
No
Beach
8 seeds
double.
ever even made the finals.
You could have South Beach double. You could have the Panthers and the Heat winning championship this year.
Exactly.
Off the top of my head.
So
Los
sorry to
Angeles
hear
Kings.
about your Dallas Stars losing game 2 there, Mr. Ken Koslow. In
This
overtime
This
again.
team is extremely frustrating because they cannot win in overtime. They have an abysmal record in
Oh,
overtime
yeah.
this
They
year.
lost today again, huh?
Yeah.
Their career record in overtime in the playoffs is 37-47, and that's totally unacceptable.
Ouch.
Yeah, there's another stat that comes out, though. I mean, the Dallas Stars go into the 3rd period for the 9th time in the postseason, and this is the first time that they lost. Their 8-1 record. Scoring the first goal of the game. This was their 11th game scoring the first goal of the game, and they had an 8-3. Well, they've got an 8-3 record now. So I mean, yeah, it's getting a little tough.
It's going to be very tough
crazy.
getting out of this one.
The Las Vegas, the Vegas Golden Knights, though, they play a little bit of a different game, and Dallas hasn't been able to respond yet. And it's going to be hard to respond even on home ice, but they should be able to respond a little bit better on home ice than they do when they're away, because Vegas gets the last change on home ice. Now Dallas will get the last change on home ice.
Right.
So where I'm going with this is Vegas plays a different style. It's not a true trap, but they play a lot in the neutral zone and they just try and capitalize. Whereas Dallas and even Carolina, to that matter, are a rushing team. So in the West right now, it's unfortunate, but Ottinger is not playing bad. The Dallas Stars didn't play bad today. They outshot Vegas. They had the game. They just couldn't get any goals.
It's unreal. Credit to Vegas's goalie Hill. Aiden Hill's his name.
Yeah, Aiden Hill and a no name.
Yeah.
As soon as what's his name got hurt in the Edmonton series and Hill went in, that's when Vegas has just been crushing it. Yeah. It's amazing how that works.
He pretty much stoned some. Who was it? At the first attack in the first period, he took that one away.
Yeah, he's done it. He's had a couple, and I mean, Vegas just kind of they got lucky. Jack Eichel, I mean, he didn't want the conversation about the draft year when him and Connor McDavid were in the same draft. But at the same token, I mean, Eichel's now had an opportunity to shine, and he gets the tying goal to force overtime with about 4 minutes to go in the third period. I mean, that's huge. These are low-scoring games here out west. A little bit different out east. It was a low-scoring game last night, 3-2 final. But really, the story out of the East is Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah. Let me pause it right there, Ron. I'm gonna get with John. John, what do you think would happen with Edmonton? Why did they lose that series?
Why did they lose that series?
Yeah.
Vegas was better. I mean, you could go really in depth with it, but I mean, for me, it's pretty simple. Vegas was better.
Unfortunately, Vegas was better in all the departments. They were able to really jam up Connor McDavid and his line. Draisaitl got points. Don't take anything away from Leon Draisaitl, but Connor McDavid just never had an opportunity to see the light at the end of the tunnel. He was always pressed close for his games. And then you look at the goaltending, and John's already talked about it. Hill comes in relief, and there's a age-old cliche that, if you can play through an injury, do it, because if you step aside to allow somebody in, all of a sudden you're going to give up that marquee spot to that other person who's just going to shine above the rest. And Hill has been doing that for the Vegas Golden Knights.
If you have a red-hot goaltender, that's gravy right there.
Yeah, I mean, usually the hottest goaltender going into the playoffs is the one that's going to shine.
I mean, look at Bob in Florida. I mean, he's just been playing lights out.
Yeah.
Well, like I said before, the Conn Smythe Trophy is for the MVP of the playoffs. And if you look at the winners, 9 times out of 10, those are going to be goaltenders. Last year it was Cale Makar, but before that, you're looking at Vasilevsky. You're looking at the last few years haven't been goaltenders as much, but there used to be a time where it was all goaltenders. Tim Thomas, Jonathan Quick.
Wasn't Jordan Bennington the Conn Smythe winner when St. Louis won?
No, I think he was in the running. St. Louis won that when? 2017?
2020, wasn't it?
No, 2020 was Tampa Bay. That was Victor Hedman won the Conn Smythe that year. Ryan O'Reilly was the Conn Smythe Trophy winner for the St. Louis Blues. Now he's with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and unfortunately, he couldn't bring his playoff experience. But going back to the 2000s, Patrick Waugh, Jean-Sebastien Giguère, Cam Ward, so many goaltenders. Tim Thomas, Jonathan Quick, just always seems to be a goaltender is in the running for that Conn Smythe Trophy. And really, they say defense wins championships, and right now that's what you're kind of seeing. The Florida Panthers, what was it? Almost entire 7 periods, but they scored twice in overtime. Once it was just disallowed. That's all. But it comes down to that goaltender, and then from there, just being able to capitalize on any chances. I mean, that if you look at Matthew Tkachuk's second overtime game winner against the Carolina Hurricanes, the one on Saturday night, not a comedy of errors, obviously, for the Carolina Hurricanes, but two Carolina Hurricanes got caught up in each other. One stick ends up in another player's skate, and he can't break loose. And that's what freed up Tkachuk. Tkachuk went in. I mean, yes, they're on the power play, but now basically you're down 2.5 guys for the Carolina Hurricanes, and there's no stopping the Florida Panthers. They had a nice cross ice seam pass, and in the back of the net, Tkachuk.
And that series now goes to Miami, where they're going to have a more impressive advantage, I think, over that in that series.
Well, I think so. I mean, credit to Carolina, credit to the Rod Brindamore, credit to everybody. But if Carolina was in the same market as the Toronto Maple Leafs, he would be on fire right now. He'd be hanging because he changed his goaltenders.
Yep.
And everybody questioned why he changed the goaltender. There was no reason for it. You lose in overtime. It's not the goaltender's fault.
Well, fourth overtime too, right?
Yeah, and that's just it. It was the fourth overtime. How does that make it the goaltender's fault?
Fifth overtime.
I mean, the hockey has just been so great with the overtime play, and it's tension filled, it's stress filled. It's just, I mean, it's been great, really great hockey.
Yeah, take Vegas out of the mix right now, and I think the rest of the games and rest of the series are really being won on road ice. It's not the home team that seems to have the advantage this year.
Yeah. I like it. And I'm a huge fan of Tkachuk right now, so I'm loving watching him. I love the reaction when he scored both overtime goals. He's like, just get off the ice. Let's go. Let's get off. I love it.
Yep.
I love
it.
Love it. No celebrating, not our home ice. Let's get out. Come on. Job's not done.
It's amazing. I mean, they've got this little board. I'm not sure if you guys seen the dressing room for the Florida Panthers, but they have a Stanley Cup cutout, and it's got 16 holes in it, which will hold a puck. So obviously their intention is to fill up that board with 16 pucks, because that's how long it takes to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, we got 6 to go.
Love it. I'm here for it. Let's go.
Let's go. I mean, now with the series shifting, Vegas gets to be a little bit on cruise control. The Dallas Stars have to do something on home ice. The Vegas Golden Knights and the Florida Panthers, both of these teams are okay with playing from what's called behind. They're okay coming from behind. They're okay, not letting the game get away from them. If the game gets away from them, then you get those blowouts that you saw against the Edmonton Oilers, 5-1, 6-2, that kind of stuff. But these are close games, obviously, going to overtime. So the thing is that if you allow Vegas to stay in when you're in Dallas, you're not going to have an opportunity to take this one. You have to come up with, obviously you have to come up with a win, but so at minimum you have to come up with one, but you've got to come up with 2 on home ice to change this back to a best of 3 affair. Because right now Vegas has all of the advantage, but now magnify that over on the East at how big of an advantage the Florida Panthers have. Not only do they have home ice advantage, they haven't even played on home ice yet. They've still got 3 games to play on home ice. They only need to win 2 of those.
Right. And I like the Panthers' chances. I like Tkachuk as well, like John said.
Now that he's not in Calgary, love him.
Right.
Love it.
As long as he's not in Calgary, right, John?
The Rat King. Let's go.
Well, the thing is a lot of people are forgetting about this, but Matthew Tkachuk started out as a Vancouver Canuck. And, the thing is that you look at the players that have been allowed to get away from some of these Canadian teams. Obviously, they don't want to see that happening in Toronto. They don't want to see that happening in Edmonton. I'm referring to Austin Matthews. And Connor McDavid. But the thing is like Austin Matthews right now has 1 year left on his contract. Kyle Dubas is gone. So the general manager that brought in Austin Matthews is no longer there. So is the team going through a shakeup, a rebuild, a retool, or are they, going to go guns a-blazing? Austin Matthews is going to want to be careful what he does with a re-sign. He's not going to want to re-sign for a long period of time if he doesn't know what the mentality of the team from the management's perspective is going to be.
Not only that, but the drought of the Canadian team winning the Stanley Cup has gone so many years.
Don't worry. Edmonton's got it next year. Don't worry.
And I mean, that's obviously, it's now starting to become a very big weight on Canadian hockey fans. It's a big weight on Canadian hockey teams. Because now every year it's now being referenced. It's now being talked about as how long has it been since a Canadian team has won the Stanley Cup? I mean, this is Canada's game.
Right.
So
it's an issue, but you know what?
Technically, Canada's game is lacrosse. Technically.
There's a summer sport and then a winter sport, but you're right. The official sport of Canada is lacrosse.
I thought it was curling, John.
It was curling, yeah, all right.
Hurry hard! Hurry hard!
I have a question for you, Ron. The fact that Wyatt Johnston was not the finalist for the Calder Trophy, did he just get caught up in a numbers game, or is there a reason why he was shunned?
No, when it comes to those, it's really, really tough because the media, the people that are choosing these winners for the different awards, they have to do a first ballot, second ballot, third ballot. So they have to put 3 different names on there. And so you get ranked, obviously names that are first choice. And so I'm just thinking your guy there, he was too many second and third choices, and it just wasn't enough to overcome not being the first choice. So yeah, it's a numbers game for sure.
I mean,
almost as bad as the draft lottery that we talked about last week.
Yeah. Well, Connor Bedard is. I mean, the Blackhawks won the draft lottery, so they get the Connor Bedard sweepstakes.
Do I have the playoffs to look forward to next year?
With Chicago?
Yeah.
If Connor Bedard can do anything like what Patrick Kane did, the answer is yes. Patrick Kane gets drafted in the following year. They're into the playoffs for the first time in a few years. And then the year after that, they hoist the Stanley Cup. So it only took 1 full season before Chicago was back on top.
Yeah, good luck with that, Derek. We'll see how that goes.
maybe we can get Quinville back.
They got a lot of issues on that team, though. I don't know if one player is going to fix it, but they definitely need a new start to build around.
Chicago, no, you're right.
But I mean, Chicago also has the money. I don't know what their cap space is. They were kind of in cap hell for a few years, but I would think they've unloaded those contracts, and hopefully they'd be able to bring some players in, do with some cap space. So.
Yeah, no. I think that's all I think that's all sorted out as far as their cap space goes. I haven't looked at the numbers for the cap space overall, but I do know that there's a couple of teams that loaded up as much as they possibly could, and now they're going to be in a little bit of dire straits when it comes around. Let's see here. Retain, final cap hits, final cap space.
Well, and I do know that was the big thing with the Blackhawks is they had all those veterans and they were trying to kind of stay in contention while kind of rebuild and keeping bad contracts. And so they've hit rock bottom, and then to get the first pick in the draft like that, they've cleared out all the cap space. I mean, that was just huge for them turning the next page on to the next page of their hockey team.
Yeah, no, exactly. So right now I'm showing Chicago still has $5 million worth of cap space. So they should be fine.
Well, the rookie contract shouldn't cost too much, should it, Ron?
No, they never do. Those are pegged. A rookie contract is pegged. You can't pay them more. You can give them a couple of signing bonuses, but you still have, to use the word cap, you do have a cap limit for rookies. And
Yeah, that's similar to the NFL. They can only pay the NFL rookies so much as well. So
yeah.
But all right, cool. All right, we got 5 minutes left. I'm going to give a shout out, and I'm going to get outside the comfort zone of the majority of this panel.
Oh boy!
Oh,
The PGA Championship was held today.
You died too.
boy.
All right, the PGA Championship was held this weekend, and there was a specific individual playing in this tournament. His name is Michael Black. And he is actually a PGA professional. He's not a tour pro. He doesn't play on the PGA Tour. He is a instructor at a club in California. And he was one of the qualifiers for the PGA Tour, for the PGA Championship this weekend. The man became the darling of the entire tournament. He was the first PGA Tour professional to make the cut in over 10 years. I think it's been more than that, but still, he became a darling because he made the cut. He's been playing really good, and today, to top his entire week off, he goes in on the 15th hole, which is a par 3, and aces the par 3. He just doesn't make a hole-in-one. He jarred it on the fly. And it's a great story. If you care about the PGA, look it up, read it up. And this guy was just phenomenal. Congratulations to Brooks Koepka. He won the tournament, but Michael Black stole the show. Michael Block is his name.
I thought this was the Sports Nerd Show, not the game show.
Thank you. Yes. Golf is, you know what? Even Josh Allen loves golf.
I don't care.
Everybody
Josh Allen likes a lot of things.
Everybody has their flaws.
Allen,
everyone has their flaws. Yeah,
Josh Allen was at the tournament all week.
Yeah, him and Von Miller are
him
like.
and Von Miller were making
I know.
news in Rochester at the tournament all week long. But Michael Block made great. You know, he does a great job, and it's an emotional and it's a feel good story. If you care, look it up, watch it. The hole-in-one was phenomenal.
I care about you, Scott.
I know you do, John. His back and forth with the crowds at the tournament all week has been fantastic. His reactions are just pure. I mean, it's just great stuff. It really is. It's a really good feel-good story. So shout out to Mr. Michael Block for his performance at the PGA this week.
Isn't this Koepka's third PGA Championship in the last 7
Koepka's
years?
third, yes, and his fifth overall, yes, his fifth major overall. So, he's a Michael Block has a feel good story. I mean, it's just, and you can make a movie out of this whole week, as far as I'm concerned, as far as his story is concerned.
He automatically qualifies for.
He finished in the top 15, which means he automatically qualifies for next year's PGA Championship at Valhalla in Louisville, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. Is he qualify for the U.S. Open?
No, I don't know. I don't know about that. But again, he's a PGA Tour. He's a coach. He teaches. He gives lessons at a country club in California. You know, he's a regular Joe. He's not a guy that plays the PGA Tour. He just gives lessons at this, and he's a PGA professional at a club in California. And it's amazing how he came through. It's amazing. So it's like I said, it's a really good feel-good story if you want to check it out.
Scott, you're a feel-good story.
Why am I a feel-good story?
You're just a feel-good story because you're a middle-aged man who loves cats.
Yeah, and I got one that will not leave me alone. He's hovering over me all the time.
Catman.
Catman.
Jesus God.
Catman.
All right, we're going to end the show on that. Thank you very much.
Right. It's Catman time now.
Right. I want to thank Derek Lofland for coming in and giving his thoughts on Jim Brown. I really appreciate it, Derek.
Thank you for having me.
And I thank Ron Gallo for coming in and give us some info on the NHL playoffs. And as always, I want to thank my co-host, Mr. Elliot Biggie Lamba, Ken Costello, and John G. Olson as well. We'll be here again next Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us. Watch the replay. We get a lot of views on the replays. And on that note, we're out of here. Elliot, please play the outro.
Well, there you have it, Nerd Nation. Another Sunday episode of the Sports Nerd Show in the books, and we are still alive to tell about it. Now, on behalf of our host, Scott, the Sports Nerd Right, and his co-host, John Olson, Ken Costello, our two lovable members in the Rat Pack, and yes, me, Big E, the entire pack would once again like to thank you all for participating with us in the best 90 minutes of sports smack talk on the web today. So until next Sunday night, dear nation, we would like to leave you with a quick PSA. Please stay safe. Please practice social distancing. And for heaven's sake, please wear a damn mask. You all just got hit with a pack rant from the Rat Pack. And with that, fellas, we are out.